I declare open the 10th meeting of the annual session 2023 of the Executive Board of UNDP, UNFPA, and UNOPS. We will now proceed to agenda item 16, other matters, adoption of pending decisions. I am joined on the podium by Mr. Steve Utawulge, Director, Public Partnerships, Bureau of External Relations and Advocacy at UNDP, Mr. Sam Choritz, Chief Executive Board Branch, UNFPA, Ms. Hafida Lewell, Officer in Charge, New York Board and External Relations Office, UNOPS, and Mr. Jordi Llopat, Secretary of the Board. And I now give the floor to the facilitators to introduce the draft decision. Starting with item 2, update on the implementation efforts on the repositioning of the United Nations Development System, Ms. Bronwyn Wex of Australia.
Mr. President, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to advise that this decision has passed silence procedure. The decision is ready for adoption. I'd like to thank all of the delegates for the very constructive and flexible approaches throughout the negotiation. It was quite a smooth one, all things considered. And also many thanks to the Secretariat and to our editors for all their support. Thank you.
I thank Ms. Wex for her efforts on our collective behalf. If I hear no objection, I will take it that the Executive Board wishes to adopt the draft decision on item 2. I see none. It is so decided. Next is I would like to give the floor to Ms. Sujin Kim of the Republic of Korea, who was facilitating item 3, internal audit and investigation.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm delighted to introduce a draft decision on internal audit and investigation under item 3. This draft decision has achieved a consensus without any comments and objection, of course, from the member state. Therefore, the draft decision is ready for adoption by the Executive Board. So I'd like to take this moment to thank all delegates, especially for Norway and Switzerland. Of course, you guys really surprised me at the beginning, but thank you so much for your constructive engagement. And also, I would like to thank the Bureau and Secretariat and agency representative for their support throughout this process. Thank you.
I thank Ms. Kim for her efforts on this facilitation and keeping smiling through the surprises. If I hear no objection, I will take it that the Executive Board wishes to adopt the draft decision on item 3. It is so decided. I give the floor to Mr. Anatoly Yanko, who was a facilitator of Ukraine, who was a facilitator for item 4, ethics.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it is my pleasure to inform you that the draft decision under agenda item 4, ethics, entitled Reports of the Ethics Offices of UNDP, UNFPA, and UNOPS, and Management Responses has achieved a consensus. Therefore, the draft decision is ready for consideration and for adoption by the Board. I would like to thank all delegations for their cooperation, active and constructive engagement, as well as flexibility shown throughout the negotiation process. Wish also to thank the Secretariat, in particular Dalita Balasanian and Horst Ruch, as well as the representatives of agencies for their support during the informal consultations on the mentioned draft decision. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I thank Mr. Yanko for his facilitation efforts on our collective behalf. If I hear no objection, I will take it that the Executive Board wishes to adopt the draft decision on item 4, ethics. It is so decided. I give the floor to Ms. Zamzam Mohammed of Kenya, who was a facilitator for item 5, protection against sexual exploitation and abuse and sexual harassment.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Executive Board, Excellencies, colleagues. I am honored to introduce the decision on item 5 on protection against sexual exploitation and abuse and sexual harassment, which I facilitated for the past 2 weeks. The decision has come to consensus and is ready for adoption by the board. I would like to take this moment to thank member states for their active engagement and the spirit of negotiation and flexibility shown throughout the decision. I would also like to show appreciation to the Secretariat, Delita, John, and the editor of the text, Horst, and to also show appreciation to the agency representatives from UNFPA, UNDP, and UNOPS for their support throughout the negotiation of the decision. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
I thank Ms. Mohammed for your efforts in undertaking that facilitation on our collective behalf. If I hear no objection, I will take it that the Executive Board wishes to adopt the draft decision on item 5. It is so decided. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Antone Senbata of Ethiopia, who was a facilitator for item 6, annual report of the administrator.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Excellencies, colleagues. I'm delighted to inform that the decision on item 6, annual report of the administrator, has passed the silence procedure successfully and is therefore ready for consideration for the board for adoption. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank all those who have been involved throughout this process, especially the delegations, for their tremendous flexibility and constructive input throughout the consultation process. And the support from the Secretariat of the Bureau has been very, very constructive and immense, so I'm very grateful for that. And finally, editors, Mr. Gretchen and Mr. Horst, for spending so much time with us in editing and compiling all those long texts. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Senbata, for your facilitation and for your timely reminder that even as we complain about the volume of paperwork in the board, all that paperwork is done by somebody, and it reflects a lot of work and which we're grateful for. If I hear no objection, I will take it that the Executive Board wishes to adopt the draft decision on item 6, annual report of the administrator. It is so decided. On item 8, evaluation, the facilitator cannot join us, Ms. Yuliana Angelova of Bulgaria, but I am informed that it is ready for adoption. If I hear no objection, I will take it that the Executive Board wishes to adopt the draft decision on item 8, evaluation. It is so decided. I give the floor to Mr. Lars Becker of Germany, who was a facilitator for item 10, United Nations Capital Development Fund.
Thank you, Mr. President, dear members of the Executive Board. I had the pleasure and the honor to facilitate decision on item 10, the report on results achieved by the United Nations Capital Development Fund. Let me take the opportunity to also thank all delegations for their active engagement and flexibility, in particular Kenya and the Kingdom of the Netherlands, whose constructive contributions further enriched and strengthened this decision. Let me also express my appreciations to the Secretariat, in particular to the editors, for their great support. The decision as it passed the silence procedure, Mr. President, is now ready for adoption. Thank you very much.
I thank Mr. Becker for your facilitation of this item on our behalf. If I hear no objection, I will take it that the Executive Board wishes to adopt the draft decision on item 10, United Nations Capital Development Fund. It is so decided. I give the floor to Mr. Emmanuel Kenga, who was of Kenya, who was a facilitator for item 11, United Nations volunteers.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I wish to introduce item 11 on United Nations volunteer, annual report of the administrator. This decision has enjoyed consensus by all delegations and is okay for adoption. I wish to take this opportunity to thank all colleagues experts for their active engagement and their flexibility exercised during the negotiation. I also wish to thank the Secretariat for the clarification made during the negotiation. All of these efforts has led to the consensual adoption of this decision. I also wish to thank the editor, Gretchen, for her tireless efforts. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Kenga, for your facilitation on our collective behalf. If I hear no objection, I will take it that the Executive Board wishes to adopt the draft decision on item 11, United Nations volunteers. It is so decided. I give the floor to Mr. Daniel Zavala of Costa Rica, who was a facilitator for item 12, annual report of the Executive Director.
Señor Presidente, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. President. It's a great honor for me and for my delegation to submit to this board the draft decision and agenda item 12, entitled Annual Report of the Executive Director of UNFPA. And after intensive and lengthy consultations, which lasted several weeks, we arrived at a draft decision upon which we agreed ad referendum for this session then. It's been an honor for me to facilitate these discussions. I very much welcome and wish to express my thanks for the constructive participation of all delegations, and particularly the support of the Secretariat, Alita Basinian, Horsroot, during the process to lend their support so very diligently. And again, for my delegation, it's a great honor to support you, sir, as President. And I now put to the board our draft decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Zavala, for your facilitation on our collective behalf. If I hear no objection, I will take it that the Executive Board wishes to adopt the draft decision on item 12, annual report of the Executive Director. It is so decided. I wish to give the floor to Mr. David Mulet of Guatemala, who was a facilitator for item 13, evaluation.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It was my honor to be facilitator for the session on agenda item 13, evaluation of the UN Population Fund. And I would like to tell you that the silence procedure ran its term successfully, and the draft decision is now ready for the board's approval. Like the other facilitators, I should like to say a big thank you to all delegations for their flexibility on this decision. There were no comments, so therefore it was very easy to reach a consensus. And my thanks also go to the Secretariat for their constant support, Hassan, Nabalita, Horst, obviously, our editor. And I'd also like to thank you, Mr. President, and thank our Vice President, at the table for the facilitation here. Thank you.
I thank you, Mr. David Moulette, for your facilitation and also for your modesty, which no doubt hides your highly developed diplomatic skills, such that there was effortless consensus. I give the floor to Ms. Rachel. Oh, sorry, I haven't gobbled that yet. You see, just when you think you've got through, if I hear no objection, I take it that the Executive Board wishes to adopt the draft decision on item 13, evaluation. It is so decided. I give the floor to Ms. Rachel Pringle of New Zealand, who was a facilitator for item 15A, UNOPS.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I have the honor to introduce item 15A, the UNOPS decision on the midterm review and the restated strategic plan. And if you allow me to save time, also I'll introduce item 15B on the UNOPS comprehensive response plan. Let me thank you for the vote of trust in me as facilitator in giving me two decisions. I'm very happy to advise that both have passed the silence procedure. In line with my colleague co-facilitators, I'd just like to thank delegates for the constructive attitudes that they brought to negotiations, their willingness to keep working and to keep finding options for us to allow us to find a way forward. Thanks also to colleagues from the Secretariat, our editor, and to colleagues from UNOPS.
Thank you, Ms. Pringle, for being a facilitator for two decisions on our behalf. If I hear no objection, I will take it that the Executive Board wishes to adopt the draft decision on item 15A, UNOPS. It is so decided. If I hear no objection, I take it that the Executive Board wishes to adopt a draft decision on item 15B, UNOPS. It is so decided. I give the floor to Ms. Marie-Eve Castongwe of Canada, who was a facilitator for item 15C, UNOPS.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is my honor as well to introduce decision 15C, UNOPS distribution to paying entities, including those of the United Systems of excess reserves accumulated after December 31st, 2021. It is also my great pleasure to share that the draft decision for which we reached consensus has passed silence as of 1:30 this afternoon. And I am grateful for the opportunity to extend my sincere appreciation to delegates for the thought leadership, for the patience, for the perseverance, for the creativity, but most importantly, for the good laughs that we shared, reaching consensus. So again, my sincere appreciation. And Mr. President, I'd also like to thank the Bureau for the leadership, the Secretariat for the guidance, the support, and of course UNOPS for the constructive and helpful engagement throughout. The decision is now ready for adoption. Thank you.
I thank you, Ms. Castongwe, for your facilitation on our behalf. If I hear no objection, I will take it that the Executive Board wishes to adopt the draft decision on item 15C, UNOPS. It is so decided.
Ulrika is here from UNDP.
I would like to really thank all the facilitators once again for, on top of all your other onerous duties, to volunteer and to be able to navigate and listen to delegations and reach a final product. It is really at the heart of what we do here, and I'm very grateful for your efforts. We will now revert to Agenda Item 1, Organizational Matters. We will proceed to the tentative work plan for the second regular session 2023. I give the floor to Mr. Jody Yopat, Secretary of the Board, to introduce the tentative work plan.
Thank you, Mr. President. The tentative work plan for the second regular session 2023 has been circulated for your consideration. It is based on the annual work plan of the Executive Board for 2023, and it has been reviewed by the Bureau, and it's subject to further changes if required. The second regular session will begin on Monday morning, 28th of August, with Agenda Item 1, Organizational Matters. We will then proceed to the UNFPA segment, starting with the statement by the UNFPA Executive Director. In the afternoon, we will continue the UNFPA segment and take up Agenda Item 4, UNFPA Structured Funding Dialogue, including the report on the UNFPA Structured Funding Dialogue 2022-2023, which will be followed by Item 5, UNFPA Country Program and Related Matters. On Tuesday, 29th of August, we will begin the UNOPS segment with Item 6, the statement of the UNOPS Executive Director and an interactive dialogue. In the afternoon, we will continue with Item 6, focusing on the UNOPS budget estimates for the biennium, the ACABQ report on the UNOPS budget estimates for the biennium, as well as the annual statistical report on UN system procurement activities in 2022. On Wednesday morning, 30th of August, the UNDP segment will begin with the interactive dialogue with the UNDP administrator. In the afternoon, we will take up Agenda Item 2 on the UNDP Structured Funding Dialogue, which will include the structured dialogue on financing the results of the Strategic Plan 2022-2025 and the annual review of the financial situation of the UNCDF in 2022. On Thursday morning, 31st of August, the UNDP segment will continue with Item 3, UNDP Country Program and Related Matters. In the afternoon, we will conclude the second regular session 2023 by adopting the decisions under Item 9, Other Matters, and revert to Agenda Item 1, Organizational Matters, to continue to consider the draft annual work plan for the Executive Board in 2024 and to approve the tentative work plan for the first regular session 2024. Mr. President, my colleagues and I are happy to answer any queries the delegation may have. I thank you very much.
Yopat for his introduction. I open the floor for comments or questions. I see none. I want to give the floor to the Secretariat to hear from them before we move forward to the I think we can move forward to the conclusion of the session, but I take it that the board agrees with a proposed tentative work plan for the second regular session 2023. It is so decided. We have now come to the conclusion of this annual session. I invite Ms. Ulrika Modir, Assistant Administrator and Director, Bureau of External Relations and Advocacy, to say a few words on behalf of UNDP.
Thank you, Mr. President, Excellencies and distinguished delegates. It was great to hear that you had fun throughout the negotiations as I came into the room. On behalf of UNDP, allow me then to, on our part, close these sessions with some few words. Of course, thanking all the members of the Executive Board for your constructive participation throughout the board discussions and not least, of course, the negotiations. It was a complex agenda, as you know by now, with certain agenda items for decisions. It's also been a quite unique, I would say, and also revitalizing Executive Board, which has highlighted our continued commitment to development, but also to multilateralism. We witness this through the highly engaging interactive dialogues, and thank you for your insights, your constructive reflections and guidance in the morning, but not least also in the afternoon where we had the possibility to really dwell into the importance of development and the hope and the possibilities for development that we see in the world of today. While we have made progress in different realms, we are aware that the challenges ahead of us are, of course, numerous. Our collective reflections throughout this week could not have been timelier. We are moving towards the SDG summit, and of course, here's where we would want to see how our signature solutions, guided by your strategic plan for UNDP, including important initiatives on climate action, debt relief, how we are supporting Secretary General's endeavors to really put forward an SDG stimulus package that can translate into real, tangible work on the ground, also through the integrated national financial frameworks. These are things that you will be able to accompany and where we would want to keep you continuously informed. Just some few words reminding us about our report. We have had a record delivery of 4.8 billion. The first year of our strategic plan, we have really been able to showcase measurable and also some impactful results. We're using innovative tools for this, including AI, so I hope that you will also, along the journey of the reports of the strategic plan, see that we can really bring forward also tangible results that you can also discuss with capitals, with your countries, with the constituencies involved. On the heels of the recommitment to the 2030 agenda in September, I think we were also challenged by you, Mr. President, to really see how we can leverage expertise. We can see many examples, but how do we really, and not only, of course, as UNDP, but as a system and with partners beyond, leverage and scale what we do through the expertise that we can provide. And then, of course, I need to mention the concern that we have with regards to declining ODA, but also the quality of ODA. And how we need, of course, in the light of this, make the case, make the arguments. You are really important for us, you and your colleagues, to translate what we transmit in these discussions into also discussions in your capitals, but also, of course, to showcase how we are leveraging the investments that you do through core support, through flexible support, and in other ways into the work that we do in partnership with international financial institutions and others. We have also, as always, accompanied and discussed also the implementation of the UNDS reform. We know how important it is. We have been called upon to really make sure that what we have promised is being translated, and rest assured that this is also what we will continue to do. I also want to mention, because maybe sometimes not mentioned enough, UNDP, as you know, we're really proud to host really key assets for the UN and for US member states. The UN Capital Development Fund, speaking about unique instruments for leveraging of finance, the UN volunteers, that true commitment and also possibility for people around the world to really engage in what we do, and then, of course, the UN Office for South-South Cooperation and the Multi-Partner Trust Fund Office. All of these entities are really important, not only for UNDP, but really for all of the system and for US member states. And then, of course, last but not least, internal organizational matters oversight. Of course, this is what you exercise in this board, and we will continue to ensure the independence of our audit and investigation and also ethics office, and make sure that these functions are as strong as they can be and that the governance systems are well in place with the highest standards of transparency. And you would know that UNDP has really been also rewarded for the levels of transparency. So allow me once again to express my recognition of all of your leadership, but not least Ambassador Kimani, for your leadership to bring in really that strategic vision into the discussions in the afternoon. I think we need to have more of true interactive dialogue, so let's practice that, because that's the way that we can really meet the expectations. We need to think new, we need to think differently and develop our work, and we need to do it together with you. Of course, to all decision facilitators, you always do a lot of work. To our colleagues doing the interpretation, and all of you supporting from behind or at the front, of course, Jordi, the Secretariat and team, a huge thanks. And now I don't want to stand in between you and your weekend, so I would just want to wish you a very, very good weekend ahead of you. And we are here to continue to discuss with you. Any questions that you would have, we will follow up with you. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank Ms. Moder for her remarks. I invite Mr. Samo Choritz, Chief Executive Board Branch, UNFPA, to say a few words on behalf of UNFPA.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished members of the board, dear colleagues and friends. First of all, thank you, Ambassador Kamani, to you and the Bureau members for all your support and guidance. This is a tricky board with a number of really important topics, and we really appreciate the guidance provided by you and the board as we move forward in implementing the strategic plan. We really want to thank all delegations for the open and constructive engagement, not just in the decisions this week, as we heard from the facilitators, but in the weeks and months leading up to this board. There's a lot of discussions that take place over coffees and informals, through briefings, the regional groups, and we very much welcome the open spirit of constructive engagement in those forums as well. Really want to thank the facilitators who worked on decisions which covered UNFPA's items, Bronwyn, Sujin, Anatoly, Zamzam, David and Danielle, and also Horst for editing. Thank you very much for helping us move forward on really important topics that provide us with, I think, really important decisions on oversight, moving forward on strategy, and we look forward to engaging with you all in the weeks and months ahead. The September session has really important topics on, we have 11 country program documents, a structured funding dialogue, which is particularly important given the concerns we have about resource outlook going forward. We very much appreciated the first interactive dialogue we'd ever had. UNDP had organized these before, we hadn't, and we very much appreciated the insights and reflections from member states. I agree with Ulrika about the need to continue to work from all sides on making these more interactive, and I thank the President for his guidance on that. We very much appreciated the questions that were posed and the reflection on demography, which we think is such an important topic, which we hope can be taken forward, not just in the SDG summit, but as the President has suggested, in the Summit of the Future as well. It's an important 12 months coming ahead also with the ICPD at 30 review. And we look forward to these as really important occasions for acceleration and for expanding rights and choices as well. We echo the importance of the independence of the oversight officers and welcome the decisions in that regard, and look forward to implementing those decisions and arranging the informals as requested. I want to thank UNDP, UNOPS colleagues and the Secretariat colleagues, the interpreters and conference room service colleagues. And then finally, just to say, we reported on, I think, really good progress on programs on the first year of the strategic plan, both in development and humanitarian context. We continue to push forward on rights and choices, but still we recognize there's a long way to go to get to the 3 zeros. And the recent draft decisions, and with your support, we feel that we're in a much better position to do that. The declines in maternal mortality that we reported on, of course, one example of a clarion call that we need for more action on these rights and choices. And then I just wanted to conclude with a statement from our ED, as she concluded on Tuesday, to say that 10-year-old girl is real. She and millions just like her keep UNFPA committed and focused. We focus on her rights, her choices, and her bright future of unlimited horizons. So thank you very much for all your support. And if I don't see you, I wish you all a wonderful summer and look forward to engaging you in the weeks leading up to September. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Choritz for his remarks. I now invite Ms. Hafida Lewell, Officer in Charge, New York Board and External Relations Officer, to make some concluding remarks on behalf of UNOPS.
Thank you, Mr. President. And indeed, on behalf of UNOPS Executive Director, USG George Moreira da Silva, as well as the whole of UNOPS team, I express our gratitude to the President, the distinguished delegates and excellencies that we have in the room today for your excellent stewardship and engagement over the past weeks. It's been very much appreciated. And we are particularly appreciative of your time guidance during the annual session of the board. Your guidance remains critical as we are implementing our restated strategic plan 2022-25 and continue our journey of reform and rebuilding while delivering support for the SDG and the 2030 agenda. I'm not going to repeat what most of my colleagues already said about this agenda and its criticality, as we only have a couple of years left until the end of this agenda, but I really endorse their statements in this regard. We are confident that the decision adopted today, especially those, of course, regarding UNOPS, will contribute to catalyzing our collective efforts towards developing the tools, system, and processes that are essential for laying the foundation for UNOPS 201, or maybe 301, if we count the 50 years of existence of UNOPS, which will happen in December 2023. A UNOPS that stands ready and deeply committed to upholding its original mandate as a central resource for the UN system and member states. We have heard this over the past week. This is a message that we cannot stop emphasizing. We are committed to delivering the rapid and impactful services necessary for the effective implementation of the 2030 Agenda. To this end, UNOPS teams in the region have already welcomed the reform and improvement to the UN development system reform, including through the management accountability framework, aligned reporting, harmonization, and the focus on integrated solution that will be the cornerstone of our work going forward. So we're particularly appreciative of that decision on the UNDS. In addition to that decision, we would also like to welcome the carefully considered, comprehensive and timely joint decision on internal audit and investigation, ethics, and protection against sexual exploitation and abuse and sexual harassment. These decisions will help UNOPS in its path towards systemic reform and forward essential cultural shifts within the organization. I also welcome and commend the 3 UNOPS decisions on our early midterm review plus of UNOPS Strategic Plan 2022-25, including the annual report of our ED for 2022, UNOPS Strategic Plan for the Comprehensive Response Plan and the distribution of excess reserve, for a balanced and encouraging approach that will pave the way forward for UNOPS to continue to deliver on its mandate. And we are very mindful of the strong checks and balances that have been put in place to rebuild the confidence and trust of its clients, partner, and most importantly, of our beneficiaries. With this, I would like to particularly thank our facilitators on the UNOPS decision, Rachel Pringle, still in the room, and Marie-Ève Castonguay of Canada, for their excellent work in ensuring the positive outcome of those decisions. I also wish to express our sincere gratitude for the interpretation team who covered the session and to thank our dedicated colleagues in the Executive Board Secretariat, our colleagues in UNDP, UNFPA, and other UN entities who cooperate with us on multiple levels. So we look forward to presenting an update on our effort to deliver on the actions outlined today across this decision. We thank you very much again for your very welcome and much needed guidance and support.
Thank you very much, Ms. Laywell, for those remarks. I will now give you my closing remarks before we gavel and go home. Members of the Bureau, Executive Board, and Observer delegations, representatives of the agencies, we've reached the end of an enriching 2023 annual session, and I appreciate everyone's valuable contributions and input. All of us recognize the crises that many of our countries and regions are facing. As a board, I believe we are responding to those crises by using our mandates to address those collective challenges. This week, we employed more traditional methods such as formal consultations and decisions to lead us to a deeper understanding and better oversight of the results presented by the agencies. The session resulted in broad engagement, endorsement of the UNOPS strategic plan, approval of the recast plan, approval of 6 country program documents, and consensus on decisions, achieved despite the busy context that we all work within. I give again a special thanks to the facilitators for their skillful navigation and the experts for their constructive engagement. I also note with appreciation agency representatives for their useful inputs and their efforts. During this session, we innovatively innovatively also undertook interactive dialogues, which I believe led to meaningful discussions. The dialogues provided by UNDP and UNFPA allowed member states to engage on pertinent development issues that concern the agency's mandates. UNDP's dialogue shared challenges, national responses, and solutions, and was enriched by member states who were commenting as well on their challenges and priorities. I want to give a very warm gratitude to the permanent representatives of Vietnam and the Democratic Republic of the Congo and their delegations for their willingness to share their experiences and on their journey to development. UNFPA's dialogue allowed us to look up from the immediate decisions, from the immediate organizational matters, to allow us to explore the opportunities and responses related to the demographic changes happening and to build resilience in a world of 8 billion. It seemed to me that such interactive dialogues provide a platform for candid discussions that are necessary for the success of upcoming intergovernmental processes. As the weeks go forward, our spirit of listening to one another, being able to engage on the practicalities and the ideas that we have that drive our development forward will be what will allow us to succeed in the coming year when we so sorely need that success. A second series of interactive dialogues is planned for the second regular session. Thanks to the Bureau for its guidance and the Secretariat for their support. In the future, I hope that the discussions by the board will respond to the outcomes and collective intelligence that emerges from the high-level political forum on sustainable development. It is coming up in July, and it is not too late for delegations to make sure they bring ideas and solutions from it to the second regular session in August. Going forward, perhaps we can give thought about how the HLPF can dovetail or at least structurally engage with the boards. I also think that we will need to think hard about how the board can engage more directly and structurally with resident coordinators to better understand the state and impact of coordination and the competencies and resources needed by the agencies to be better at coordination and blended joint programming. I say it almost towards the end, but it is perhaps the most important point to emerge, which is that we appreciate these three agencies. We appreciate their personnel. We value them because their work speaks to our desire to leave no one behind. With that, I want to give condolences to the UNFPA family for the loss of Dr. Mede Umarazakov, and through them to his family and friends. We bid farewell to Usha Rao Monari and Asako Okai from UNDP, and Argentina Mataval Pichin and Mabingu Ngom from UNFPA. We thank them for spending years of their professional life working in these agencies and advancing our decisions and our desire to uplift our fellow man. We wish them all the very best in their well-deserved retirement or their departure to greener pastures. We welcome Senen Hunton as the new Regional Director for Western Central Africa for UNFPA. In conclusion, colleagues, I thank you for your patience and look forward to continuing to work with you on solutions to the challenges that face us and that we can solve using the capabilities that these agencies have. Thank you. I thank all participants today for your cooperation that has led us to the successful conclusion of our work. I now declare the annual session 2023 of the Executive Board of UNDP, UNFPA, and UNOPS closed.